In this video I'm going to show you the steps I went through when building my car. So first of all, this is a 1994 Mercedes C280. It has the M104 inline 6 in it, and when I bought it, it was a little bit rusty. So I removed the rust and repainted the wheel arches and so on. I also did some minor repairs. I changed the springs from the stock elegant springs to the stock sport springs and lowered the car by about 2 inches. I also changed the steering dampener and did a service on it. I drove it like this for about a month. And I bought some 17-inch rims. Those are 8x17 BBS RX201. I bought locally for pretty cheap, got a good deal on them. So this is the car when I was finished with my first repairs. The next thing I bought was the turbo. So the turbo is a whole set HX40 with twin scroll exhaust side, and the exhaust side has 16 centimeters. So that's what they're rated at from size. When I got it, it was stuck, so the turbine was stuck to the exhaust housing, rusted. I put it in diesel overnight and separated it. Then I refurbished it, so I put new bearings in it and new seals and so on. What I also did was sandblasting the compressor housing, and I drilled and tapped the hole for 8th and PT fitting for the boost source. The next thing I bought was this gearbox. It's a Mercedes 6-speed. It's called 717663. It came out of a Seal K230 compressor and has a 400 Newton meter torque rating. The dual mass flywheel and clutch assembly also came from the same car. The shifter assembly is from a 2003 Mercedes C270 CDI, so a diesel, and it has to be shortened. So the assembly has to be shortened, the shift rod has to be shortened, and the cable which tilts the shift rod has also to be shortened. To make this gearbox fit into a W202, you have to enlarge the hole for the shifter in the transmission tunnel, make a new bracket, adapt the gearbox mount, and you have to shorten the prop shaft because this gearbox is about 6 centimeters longer than the stock one, the 5-speed. Also, you have to adapt the harness for the backlight switch, so the reverse switch, but that's not a lot of work. To shorten the cable, you have to be very patient because you don't necessary can elongate it afterwards. So this cable is a push-pull type and very tricky to work with. This is the shifting rod with about 6 centimeters cut out of it, welded back together with TIG afterwards. So this is the car in the air. All work is performed in my driveway, and as you can see, little winter weather here. This is the stock DMF and clutch when I was working on fitting the shifter assembly. This is the shifter assembly in place, so the hole is cut bigger and afterwards I shortened it. This is the new transmission bracket. I made it out of 20 by 20 and 25 by 25 millimeter square steel tubing, welded up and painted. So I made this fit with the engine on an engine hoist and the transmission jack in the back, aligned it, measured it up, and then cut up the parts, drilled the holes and made the bracket. And as you can see here on the left side, there is the end link of the cable, which is, as I mentioned, very tricky to shorten, and the bigger cut hole for the shifter assembly. Then I started fabricating the turbo manifold, so those are this are the flanges, stock flanges cut off the stock headers. Those are steel, not iron. This T4 divided flange for the turbo. The exhaust flange for the turbo, and I made these flanges out of 12mm bar stock, standard steel. This is where it belongs to. Then I began with the header. So I made this header out of 42.4mm tubing and elbows, and the header is a twin scroll header, so the front bank and the back bank are separated until the compressor wheel or turbine wheel. I also fitted dual wastegates, so I bought tile knockoffs, which you will see later. While I was welding the nearest pipe to the exhaust flange, I welded the flanges to this big box tubing to prevent the flanges from warping. Here it's fit up in the car, almost finished, but no wastegates on yet. There are the wastegates in place. As I said, dual wastegates, one in the front bank and one in the back bank. I made these headers so I can fit the turbo without deleting or replacing the overflow tank or expansion tank. This is the 3-inch stainless steel downpipe, and the thing you can see up there, this white piece, is the part for the electric cutout. So I have electric cutout. The 3-inch mid pipe is reduced to 2.5-inch and then leads into factory exhaust. Then I started with the intercooler and intercooler piping. As you can see here, I had to notch the impact bar to fit this intercooler with 76mm core size. It's 450mm wide and 300mm tall. Just a random eBay Chinese intercooler. Then I made the intercooler piping. This is also 3-inch aluminum, and as you can see, the bumper fits. And what you can't see here is that the lower core support has to be hardly modified to accomplish the fitment of the intercooler piping. Also, the tow hook had to leave, and made a tow hook thing that can screw in. The holes behind the headlights here were there from factory. Here you can see the intercooler piping finished. You can see I made the block up plate I made for the intake flap. This is the oil drain into the oil sump, 20mm aluminum tubing. The drain from the turbo downwards is 21mm stainless steel tubing. I used just a short piece of hose to connect these two pipes. For the oil feed of the turbo, I used the standard hydraulic hose with M12 by 1.5mm fittings. This is the ECU I'm running, EMO from ECU Master, very capable unit. Does 6 cylinders, fully sequential, has an inbuilt wideband O2 controller, inbuilt EGT, inbuilt everything. I started with the wiring harness with open lead harness 2 meters long and went from there. I used stock connectors of a broken stock wiring harness. Every sensor and actor is stock on this engine actually, besides the IAT sensor and the boost control, of course. Works like a charm. Here's the finished harness. Back here you can see the red and yellow plugs for the EGTs. I also upgraded the fuel pump and put a new filter in. So this is a Bosch 044. The lines are all stock and nothing I had to change here. So after the first few tests I saw a big problem. The head gasket was leaking oil badly, so I had to tear this whole thing apart again. At first I thought it's only the front timing cover, but it wasn't, it was the head gasket. So I replaced the head gasket. Here you can see the counterfeit Bosch 440cc injectors, and that's the head, which looks quite nice for its age. You can see the turbo and exhaust system with the twin recirculated wastegates. Another issue here, you can see these hoses for the vacuum. Those were nylon at first, and I melted them at the first big test drive. So I switched them to Teflon hoses and had no problem since then. For the fittings for the vacuum, I use push lock type 6mm to 8th MPT. This is the finished product. I painted the brackets and the intercooler bracket for a more stealthy look. I also made some piping for the PCV, which is rerouted into the intake. For the intake, I used a random Chinese filter, and some 4-inch wastewater pipe. So it's a standard PP pipe. For the upcoming season, I'm planning on a different flywheel because mine's pretty hurt, and a new clutch, maybe bigger injectors and more boost. So I hope you found this video informative, and thanks for watching.